Hello there and welcome. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the creative process of a true literary giant. We're diving deep into the very specific, deeply personal, and, let's be honest, kind of strange habits that fueled the absolute genius of Maya Angelou. And to really get it, we have to look at the very structure of her creativity, which all starts with a simple but really profound idea.
But first, let's just frame this whole thing with a question. What's really the difference between a habit and a ritual? Most of us have habits. We brush our teeth, we check our phones. They're just things we do, a lot of the time without even thinking. But a ritual? Oh, that's something else entirely. It's a deliberate set of actions, packed with meaning, designed to actually shift your state of mind. Just keep that idea in your head as we go.
Okay, I want you to listen to this. It's an account from a hotel worker in Mexico. So after some guests checked out, housekeeping walks in and finds this absolutely bizarre scene. The mirrors covered with washcloths. There were crosses drawn in some kind of oil on the walls, the TV, even the headboard. And on the bed, a towel soaked in blood. They said the smell just hit you the moment you walked in the door. Now, your mind probably jumps to some pretty dark places, right? A paranormal thing, a crime scene. But what if I told you that this scene, this stripped-down room, the weird objects, the intense, almost visceral evidence of something huge happening is remarkably similar to the creative sanctuary of Maya Angelou, one of the most beloved writers of the 20th century. Yeah, this isn't a horror story. It's the story of how incredible art gets made.
So how in the world do we make sense of this? Well, to understand Angelou's method, we have to look past her habits and see the powerful ritual that was really at play. And to do that, we can actually turn to this fascinating framework from anthropology that explains how we humans create these kinds of transformative experiences. See, a ritual in this sense isn't just some quirky superstition. It's more like a technology for transformation. Anthropologists like Arnold von Gennep and Victor Turner defined it as a series of actions with a really clear purpose to focus your attention so intensely that you can literally move from one reality, our normal everyday world, into another, more heightened state of being.
And this process, it almost always follows three distinct phases. First up, there's separation. You have to consciously leave your normal life behind. Second is the transition, where you enter what's called a liminal space. It's a kind of in-between state where the real work happens. And then finally, reassimilation, where you come back to the everyday world, but you're changed by the experience. We're going to use this exact structure to dissect Maya Angelou's incredible writing process.
So let's dive in, starting with phase one. The separation. For Angelou, this was absolutely the first non-negotiable step. Writing wasn't something she could just do at her kitchen table. It required a deliberate, physical departure from her own life. And this quote just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? Angelou's home was a place of comfort, of beauty, of family. But that very comfort was a distraction. To do the deep, often painful work of her writing, she needed to be somewhere else entirely. A place with no personal history, no aesthetic pleasure. It was a conscious act of self-exile.
And this is how she did it. In every town she lived in, she would rent a cheap, anonymous hotel room for months at a time. Her instructions were strict and, frankly, bizarre. The staff had to remove all the art from the walls. She insisted they never change the bedsheets because she never slept there. They were only allowed in to empty the trash. Apparently, the hotel management would sometimes slip notes under her door, begging to change the sheets, afraid they'd get moldy. She always said no. She was systematically stripping the room of any identity, turning it into a sterile, anonymous container just for her work.
So once she had separated herself, she could enter phase two, the liminal space. This hotel room was her sacred ground. It was the workshop where the magic and, yeah, the torment of creation could finally happen. The word liminal actually comes from the Latin for threshold. A liminal space is a place of transition, where you are neither here nor there. You're on the threshold between your old self and your new self, between the real world and the world of the story. For Angelou, that tiny, mean hotel room was her threshold. It was where she became a walker between the worlds, able to tap into memories and emotions that were just off limits in her daily life. Now check out the tools she brought with her into this space. They weren't random at all. Each item was like a key, an instrument with a very specific purpose. The legal pad and pens for the actual writing, the dictionary and thesaurus for precision, a bottle of sherry, which she might sip as early as 6:15 in the morning or wait until 11. A deck of cards to play solitaire when she got stuck. It was a way to, as she put it, loosen the brain and find a place of enchantment. And then there was the Bible.
And her use of the Bible is so fascinating. It wasn't just for spiritual guidance, it was a primary creative tool. She'd read passages aloud, not really for the content, but to tune her ear to the music of the language. It was all about rhythm, cadence, and the sheer power of words. It was like she was reminding herself of the glorious potential of her medium before she even started.
And let's not forget how physical this work was. She didn't sit at a desk. No, she wrote, lying across the bed, propped up on one elbow. She did this for hours a day for months on end until her elbow was literally encrusted with calluses. I mean, that small detail tells you everything, right? This wasn't some breezy act of inspiration. It was hard physical labor. It was a craft that left a literal mark on her body.
But the ritual didn't end when she put her pen down. Nope. Just as important as entering the sacred space was the process of leaving it. This is phase 3, the reassimilation, the very structured return to normal life. Just look at this schedule. It is absolutely ironclad. She'd wake at 5:30 a.m., be in that hotel room by 6:30, and work until about 2 p.m., aiming for 10 to 12 pages. Then, the first act of coming back. She would go home and take a shower, physically washing the work off of her. She would try to completely forget about it. She said she'd go to the grocery store and just pretend to be normal. She wouldn't even look at the work again until 5 p.m., when she'd start the brutal process of editing it all down to just 3 or 4 pages. And this is the final, brilliant step in her daily ritual. After making and eating dinner, she would read the day's edited pages aloud to her husband. But here's the key. He was forbidden from commenting. His only job was to be a silent witness. The whole purpose of reading it aloud was for her to hear it with fresh ears, to catch what she called the dissonance. It was her way of bringing the work out of that solitary, liminal space and testing it in the air of the real domestic world. So, why? Why go through all of this? Why the tiny, mean room, the calloused elbow, the rigid schedule? Because the work demanded it. This intense ritual was the crucible where she forged some of the most important literature of our time. I mean, think about the themes she was tackling. This is not light stuff. She wrote about the deepest wounds of racism, about identity, about loss and survival. To confront those truths, to wrestle them onto the page with honesty and grace, she couldn't be distracted by a pretty room or the demands of daily life. She needed that solitary, sacred space to go to the hard places. Angelou often quoted Nathaniel Hawthorne, "Easy reading is damn hard writing," and that was her mantra. She knew that the effortless musical flow of her prose was the result of incredible labor. Her ritual wasn't about waiting around for a muse to strike. It was about building a workshop where she could show up day after day and do the hard, painstaking work of making language sing. And this is the result. This is what was made in that tiny hotel room. These lines from Still I Rise aren't just words. They're an anthem of resilience forged in the fire of her ritual. That repetition, the power, the defiant joy, it's the direct product of a process that allowed her to turn personal and historical pain into transcendent art. In the end, her ritual was just a reflection of her entire philosophy. It wasn't just about getting the work done. It was about creating the exact conditions needed to not just survive the creative process, but to thrive within it, to tackle the hardest subjects with passion, with compassion, and with that unmistakable style. And that brings us right back to us, doesn't it? Angelou's process teaches us that the most important work we do often requires a deliberate, intentional space, free from all the noise of the everyday. And it leaves us with a question to think about. What is the work in your life, whether it's creative, professional, or personal, that is so important it demands its own ritual, its own sacred space? What do you need to separate from in order to truly create?